A ship carrying 28 corpses drifted in the Arctic for 13 years. Each one had their eyes open, as if waiting for someone to open the door. In 1775, someone really came. A whaling ship bumped into it in the thick fog. The crew climbed onto the deck. The air was so cold that it couldn't even transmit sound. They pushed open the captain's room door. A man was sitting at the table with a pen in his hand, with the pen tip hovering over the last word in the log. His pose froze for 13 years. A woman next to him held the child in her arms. The two were frozen into a statue. There was no fear on their faces, but a kind of calm that had given up. None of the 28 people tried to escape, no fighting or calling for help. It was as if when death came in, no one noticed. And what's even crazier is that the person who found him was scared and fled that night. The ship disappeared again, and no one ever saw it again. His story began in 1761. The ship was called Octavius. That year, it docked at the London port, filled with goods for China. The ship had experienced sailors. There was also the captain's wife and young son. A man took his wife and son to sea for business, which was not uncommon at that time. But what happened later made this decision turned into a 13-year nightmare. The voyage went smoothly. After more than a year, Octavius safely arrived in China. He unloaded and replenished, loaded new goods, and prepared to return. The normal route should have bypassed the Cape of Good Hope. Although it was far, it was safe, but the captain made a fatal decision. The weather was unusually warm that year. The ice in the Arctic seemed to be much thinner than usual. The captain looked at the chart and had an idea: to take the Northwest Passage. This route goes through the Arctic from the Pacific Ocean and directly to the Atlantic Ocean. If it worked, it would save several months of sailing. More importantly, in 1761, no ship had successfully crossed this route. Whoever succeeded first, whose name will be forever engraved in history. Fame and fortune and shortcuts were both in front of him. The captain gambled at first. Everything went smoothly. Octavius sailed north into the Arctic waters. The wind was calm and the sea was wide. The crew was in high spirits. Everyone thought they were making history. But the North Pole would not give anyone face. As the ship went deeper, the temperature dropped sharply. The water surface narrowed rapidly. Floating ice approached from all directions. The wind direction changed. The biting cold wind cut like a knife, cutting through the canvas and ropes. Then, an extreme cold snap came without warning. The ice closed at a visible speed, locking Octavia in the middle. The crew tried to chisel the ice, but they couldn't dig it. The ice kept piling up along the hull. The wood screamed in horror under the pressure. Within a few days, the whole ship was completely frozen and couldn't move. 28 people were trapped on the ice in the Arctic, only white ice and endless silence. Then came the real hell. The polar night came. The sun completely disappeared from the horizon. They were thrown into an endless darkness. Food became less and less day by day. The cold penetrated every plank of the ship. Sleeping became a torture. The once hopeful sailors began to become numb and sluggish. The white steam they breathe out is the only evidence of life. Here, I want to talk about a medical knowledge that many people don't know. When people die in extreme cold, not like in movies where they just freeze to death and just fall down, the real process of hypothermia death is far more bizarre than you think. When body temperature drops below 35 degrees, the body shakes violently. This is the last self-rescue mechanism. Then, judgment sharply declines. Many people will do incredible things, such as taking off their clothes in a blizzard, which is medically called abnormal undressing, because the dying body will produce burning-like hallucinations that make you think you are being roasted. If body temperature continues to drop below 30 degrees, the shaking suddenly stops. Muscles stiffen, and consciousness becomes blurred. People will enter a state similar to deep sleep, and then in this gentle illusion, they stop breathing quietly. This explains why when Octavius's crew was found and so calm, they didn't freeze to death suddenly. They died in a process that was almost painless. One by one closed their eyes. Some people wrapped in thin blankets never woke up. Some might have been waiting waiting for the ice to melt, waiting for the wind to blow again, waiting for a rescue that would never come. But the North Pole will not pity anyone. The lives on Octavia were extinguished like candles. The one that lasted the longest was probably the captain, because his log ended on November 11th, 1762. Imagine that picture. Everyone around him is dead. His wife and son froze to death in the bed behind him. He sat alone at the table, wrote down the final coordinates with hands that were about to fail. Latitude 75 degrees north, 160 degrees west longitude, and the pen tip stopped on the paper and never moved again. There was a corpse next to him, a crew member tightly clutching a flint box. This detail is too cruel, indicating that at the last moment, someone was desperately trying to light a fire. But in the sealed cabin at minus tens of degrees, a small flint could not save anyone. After everyone died, the story didn't end. On the contrary, the most incredible part has just begun. Octavius became an unmanned ship, locked by the ice and drifted with the current. No one steered or navigated. In the darkness of the Arctic, silently drifted for 13 years. 28 bodies were perfectly preserved by the cold, without decaying, and not disturbed by any animals. The captain still sat at the table, holding a pen, and his wife still holds the child. Everything is frozen, so at the moment of death. But what shocked people most was not how well preserved, but where the ship went. The last recorded coordinates, 250 miles north of Barrow, Alaska. The location where it was found, in the Atlantic Ocean west of Greenland, separated by the Northwest Passage, across the deadly waterway of the Canadian Arctic Islands. The ice cracked at some point. The current pushed the ship full of dead people all the way east, across the entire Arctic. It was not until 1906, Norwegian explorer Amundsen, with 6 people, driving a specially modified expedition ship, the Joa, and it took 3 years to complete. He learned Inuit survival skills and used the most advanced navigation equipment. Even so, he still nearly died many times. Octavius, an 18th century merchant ship that was unmanned, carrying 28 frozen corpses over 100 years before Amundsen, silently completed this voyage. The dead did it, what living people couldn't do with all their might. On October 11th, 1775, Harold, the chief mate, shouted to the ship in 5 languages, but all fell on deaf ears. The only sound that came was the low moan from the ice squeezing the wood, just like the ship itself was wailing. 5 people boarded the ship to check. The scene in the bilge made them completely collapse. The first corpse was frozen into an ice sculpture at the hatch, with their eyes wide open, as if staring at everyone who came in. The further they went, the more corpses they found. Some were holding tools, some wrapped in torn blankets. Everyone kept their last action before death. The chief mate took the log from the captain's stiff fingers, pried out the logbook, and ran away. The 5 rowed back to Harold like crazy. In the chaos, the frozen pages in the middle of the log broke off. Only the first and last few pages remained. On those missing pages, maybe wrote the crew's last fear and despair. But this information was lost forever. Some scholars believe that it's a nautical urban legend spread among sailors. In 1828, the New York Gazette published a terrifying discovery describing a frozen ghost ship in the Arctic. The details were similar to Octavius, but no ship name was mentioned. Others refuted that in the 18th century, many small merchant ships would not appear in official records at all. Lack of written records doesn't mean they didn't exist. Whatever the truth is, one thing is certain. In that era, the Arctic swallowed countless lives. In 1845, British explorer Franklin set off with 128 people, also trying to cross the Northwest Passage, but they all died and none survived. The North Pole was never a place for humans. It uses cold, darkness, and loneliness to slowly kill every intruder. And those who died are perfectly preserved under the ice. For a year, 10 years, 100 years, until someone stumbled upon them. Octavius is such a ship carrying 28 corpses with open eyes, drifted silently in the darkness. No direction and no end, only endless cold and time. Maybe it has already sunk to the bottom of the sea, or maybe he was sealed again by the ice, buried in a corner that humans have never set foot on. But maybe, just maybe, he is still floating.